Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, and I am transmitting from the beautiful central areas of the Mongolia state, which is also known as Mississippi. Yeah, I'm just doing a little traveling. I'm going to head out to the western part of the United States to see some family, network, etc. But, just gonna do good mood just to do a couple more stories. I'm just digging through here from Twitter and all that good stuff. And the first thing I'm going to be addressing today is from the Red Ice Creations, and it's entitled Bergdahl Questions Raised. Is this a script? And just to let you know, it came out today, June 4th, 2014. That is today's date as well. So mark it down. Alright, let's begin. Like many other military hero narratives released by the White House and Pentagon over the years, the Bergdahl story on its surface is one of war and warriors, sacrifices and duty. And like other hero narratives, the more that is revealed to the tale, the more head-scratching and questions-raising goes on. This all began in 2009 when U.S. Army soldier Sergeant Bowie Bergdahl, serving in Afghanistan, disappeared from his unit. He was held captive for years by the Haqqani Network, a Taliban ally, and several U.S. soldiers died searching for him. It was alleged he had deserted due to his sympathies for the Afghanis and his discontent with the war. Dr. Sebastian Gorka writes for Breitbart.com. There's a link for that. And as it says, according to his friends and those that know him, Bergdahl joined the military in order to help the Afghan people and provide philanthropic support to the war effort. However, the other sources report that he was taken while using the lanterns, and he's also alleged to have become separated during the patrol. What is the truth? What President Obama may have assumed would be patriotic hero story instead turned controversial quickly when it was revealed that Sergeant Bergdahl had been swapped in a prisoner trade. Bergdahl was returned for the release of 5 Guantanamo prisoners, dubbed the hardest of the hardcore by Senator John McCain, which all of us know he is a CFR stooge. Not only was this move done without giving lawfully required 30 days notice to Congress, according to Infowars.com. Excuse me here, is also set a price for every captured American service member in the Middle East. This question is eerie similar to a spy swap between two countries, like father like son. An even stranger turn, however, Sergeant Bowie Bergdahl's father, Robert Bergdahl, has taken the stage in dramatic fashion. Jason Howerton writes for TheBlaze.com, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. That's the simple phrase that Robert Bergdahl, father of the Free Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, said in Arabic at a press conference with President Barack Obama on Sunday. The father proceeded to speak in Pashto, also known as Afghani, because he had his son might have difficulty understanding English after 5 years in captivity. Good grief, sorry about that. The phrase Bismillah ar-Rahman al-Ram is a common Arabic phrase considered by some to be a major pillar of Islam and featured prominently in the Quran. So why did Robert Bergdahl use the phrase? Exactly what message was he trying to send? That's the debate that's currently raging on the internet, with some alleging that the father was claiming the White House for Islam and others downplaying it as a very common innocent phrase. Meanwhile, many people are simply struggling to understand why he chose that specific phrase, and if there is more significance to than meets the eye. Independent journal review Kyle Becker speculates there may be an unknown explanation for why Robert Bergdahl might say at the press conference it may have been another condition for his son's release, yet we can't know that because Obama made a deal unilaterally and illegally since he did not consult Congress. Yes, because Barry Soetoro thinks he should be the king who should all kiss the floor he walks on. Claire Lopez, a former CIA operations officer and fellow at the Center for Security Policy, claimed that in a controversial post that Robert Bergdahl sanctified the White House and claimed it for Islam by saying the phrase at the press conference. 5 years in captivity and the son has forgotten how to speak English? Not likely. Here is the President Obama's immediate response to the Islamic quotes during the press conference. There is a YouTube video for that. And I want to bring this up a little bit and try to see if you guys can hear it. Let's see if this works.
Right now who's having trouble speaking English. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Zayabayem. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Zayabayem. I'm your father, Bo.
Interesting. And you can see Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama smiling like, yes, I am a bend over bow to the New World Order as well. I'm using Islam as a pawn. And so it was interesting because the whole thing, it looks like they try to use that whole boogeyman of the Muslims. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of crackpots in every form of religion, and they got their quacks in the movement as well. But other than me, I'm going to go totally Islamic bashing. But I recommend everyone to read the Quran themselves. Screw all the documentaries in good faith and all these little boneheads trying to claim to be experts. Read it yourself. And practice it, and you can figure it out on your own free will. We'll proceed. Robert Bergdahl, sporting a long beard, learning the Pashto language and sanctify the White House are strange under the circumstances, but the critics of the Bergdahl story also raise an issue of the father's controversial public statement on Twitter. From Mail Online, just a few days before his son was released in a trade for 5 Guantanamo detainees, Mr. Bergdahl tweeted at a Taliban spokesman saying, I am still working to free all Guantanamo prisoners. God will repay for the death of every Afghan child. Amen. Alright. In March, he wrote, democracy is a cold war in the West, in response to a comment about the Afghan elections. He also raised eyebrows when, in a press conference, he said the family's hometown of Haley, Idaho, were so much like Afghanistan. I can't make that judgment. I haven't been there. So, in 2011, video message to Bo's captors, Mr. Bergdahl said, strangely to some, we must also thank those who have cared for our son for almost 2 years. We know our son is a prisoner and at the same time a guest in your home. Is this a man trying to protect his son, or is it something more? The Manchurian Candidate. Certainly, it's been pointed out this narrative echoes scenes from the TV Homeland, with MedialTE.com underscoring the consistencies. Well, on Tuesday afternoon, the analogy roared into the mainstream during the opening of MSNBC's The Cycle. Host Crystal Ball reviewed the latest details to emerge from the Bo Bergdahl story before using Homeland Connection to make the story just that much more relatable for viewers. for generations of Americans who have come of age during the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and in the Persian Gulf. In a lot of ways, our only experience with a war on terror POW is through the Showtime series Homeland, Ball said. She explained that on the show, the character Nicholas Brody is celebrated as a hero when he returns from the age of captivity and struggles to adjust back to daily life. For anyone who has seen the show, that's a bit of an understatement. The storyline then shifts to speculation that Brody might not be the hero the fictitious U.S. military says he is. Ball continued. Now clearly, Bergdahl is not a jihadi sympathizer looking to assassinate the vice president, she added, as the photos of Bergdahl and Brody side by side appeared on the screen. But many Americans are using Homeland as a frame for helping them to understand what Bergdahl will face returning home to daily life. It is all scripted. That's the question. Has someone been mind controlled here? And if so, is the son in captivity or the father back in the States? Some question Robert Bergdahl's state of mind, suggesting he's suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. That's just an interesting claim. Spies like us. Most importantly, will this narrative be used for purposes of terrorism? In this story, not only have 5 terrorists been released back into the wild, undoubtedly after notorious Gitmo treatment and retaining no love for the United States, but also the all-American soldiers' allegiance and motives are up for speculation in addition to the father's behavior. Will they be used as threats down the road? Is Bo Bergdahl one of the white Al-Qaeda in the making? According to ObamaCSI.com, the white Al-Qaeda myth was first introduced back in 2008. This was the first major attempt by the U.S. government and the mainstream media to link white people with alleged Islamic terrorists. With scary reports of the U.S. Jihad Jane and the U.K.'s White Widow, the threat is no longer over there, but it is now white and homegrown, and the only way to stop it is to increase the security state and crack down on freedoms. Wow. Infowar writes, recent statements by Bergdahl's father, as well as his mannerism, also suggest that Bergdahl was trained by an intelligence agency to penetrate that Haqqani network under deep cover. For one thing, it's puzzling that Robert Bergdahl, Bergdahl's father, and an Idaho resident can speak Pashto, one of the official languages of Afghanistan, considering that the State Department's Foreign Service Institute considers Pashto one of the most difficult languages for an English speaker to learn without immersion in a native environment. Both the FSI and the Pentagon's Defense Language Institute are likely the 2 best sources for Pashto course material for native English speakers. Nobody sane wants war and suffering. Everyone wants their sons, daughters, and family members to come home from war. But the question must be raised, and such titty hero narratives must be challenged in the search for truth and the protection of freedoms. Well, it is always gotta examine everything that's been addressed, because I haven't really been following this particular case, but many people said he should be Mr. Bergdahl, Sergeant Bergdahl to be exact, should be charged for desertion. They don't believe he was captured, but we gotta really examine the whole thing more thoroughly. But there's a lot of questions. Is it possible the guy's a military candidate? Yeah, anything's possible. Can it be staged, orchestrated? Possible too. But like I say, you have to have an open mind and observe responsibly. and hopefully the truth will officially come out. Alright, well, next one. Actually, this is from RT America. Where is it? RT? Yeah, RT. And actually, originally from Carrot. AFP photo. Okay. It's entitled, NRA publicly apologized for criticizing Texas open carry movement. Came out today. And as it reads, about 1 week after the National Rifle Association called the open carry gun movement in Texas downright scary, the powerful gun organization has backtracked and issued an apology. Speaking on one of the group's radio programs, Chris Cox of the NRA's Institute for Legislative Action said his organization unequivocally supports open carry, the right of an individual to openly carry firearms in public spaces, dismissing the statement to the contrary as the opinion of a particular staff member. It is a distraction, Cox says, according to Talking Points memo. There was some confusion. We apologize again for any confusion that post caused. It shouldn't have happened, he added. I have a discussion with the staffer who wrote that piece and expressed his personal opinion. Our job is not to criticize the law behavior of fellow gun owners. The controversial and surprising NRA statement appeared after pro-gun activists in Texas began protesting policies of establishments, restaurants, and other shops that ask customers to stop bringing their firearms inside. Demonstrators appear at coffee shops and fast food restaurants brandishing not only handguns, but long guns and assault rifles. Good grief, I like that. Assault rifles. Cox said the NRA supports Texans in their desire to eliminate open carry restrictions, suggesting only differences in the terms of tactics. Some people believe that the best way to effectuate that sort of policy change is in protest, Cox said. And what they did in Texas, some people decided to protest absurdly to ban on open carry handguns by carrying their long guns openly and legally. Now the truth is an alert went out that referred to this type of behavior as weird or somehow normal, and that was a mistake. Remarks represent a notable turnaround from a week ago when a group of pan activists for showing a lack of consideration and manners. Let's not mince words. Read the NRA's original statement. It's not only rare, it's downright weird, and certainly not a practical way to go normally about your business while preparing to defend yourself. To those who are not acquainted with the dubious practice of using public displays of firearms as a means to draw attention on oneself or one's cause, it can be downright scary. As noted by the Huffington Post, gun rights activists, including Open Carry Texas, immediately fired back at the NRA and accused the organization of hypocrisy. If they don't retract to discussing their respectful manners, wrote the Open Carry Texas, the group will have no choice but to withdraw its full support of the NRA and establish relationships with other gun rights organizations that right for all gun rights, instead of just paying them lip service the way NRA appears to be doing. Yeah, some things you don't say. You first you gotta watch that tongue. And I could say this of the National Rifle Association, they still have their flip-floppers in that organization. However, there is a tide turning in there, or even with some of the executive board members are really pushing the envelope. And what happened here, one of the staffers chose poorly, is downright scary. Because in Texas, you can carry rifles over your shoulder. You don't need a permit or anything like that. And some of the so-called blue staters, or I call them neoliberals, okay, they're just like neoconservatives, bunch of quacks, think, oh, we shouldn't be doing that. Well, it is legitimate in Texas, okay, and it is a natural born right, period. But on the flip side, some of these businesses, they have, on a property rights issue, they're entitled to not to have them come in with their firearms. And the stupidest thing was saying we don't have no guns allowed. Okay, they post no guns allowed on their stores or restaurants. You know what that means? It's saying criminals, come on in. It's more of a not a gun-free zone, but a criminal invitation facility. So the store owners have to really think about that, but they do have that right, and I have to respect their views. And a lot of people who are carrying their firearms, of course, you're gonna have your little clowns and glam boys think it's a fat show, but it's many more of those individuals in the Lone Star State are carrying more honorably and exercising their rights, including free speech, assembly, natural born rights. And what's interesting, because we could look at here on the Bill of Rights, it's very interesting. Their own Bill of Rights, Article 1, Texas Constitution, and I like what it says here: freedom and sovereignty of the state. Texas is a free and independent state, subject only to the Constitution of the United States. Hey, and the maintenance of our free institutions and the perpetuity of the Union depend on the preservation of the right of the local self-government, unimpaired to all states. So interesting when it says it's subject to the Constitution of the United States. We can think about the first, how they're doing it is the first, the second, and the Ninth Amendment, natural born rights. And of course they have a thing here on equal rights to all on Section 3. And they do have inherited political power. Yep, they have all the rights, all inalienable rights to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they think expedient. Okay, and of course you got the whole thing, the oaths, the religious views, and freedom of speech is here too. All right, that's Section 8. Okay, and they Section 8, and of course got some interesting stuff in here. Habeas corpus, yeah. Yeah, okay. Ex post ex factos, bill attainder of ex facto or retroactive laws, impairing obligation of contracts, no bill of attainder, ex post facto law, retroactive law, or any law impairing the obligation of contract shall be made. Yep. And of course, they got the thing here about privileges. Section 19, deprives of life, liberty, due course of law. All right. And we can just hit around right to keep and bear arms, which is Section 23. Every citizen shall have the right to keep and bear arms in the lawful defense of himself or the state. But the legislature shall have the power by law to regulate the wearing of the arms with the view to prevent crime. Okay, a little bit some conditionals there, but it's just, you have to look at that. Thank you. And it says here, Section 29, provision of Bill of Rights accepted from powers of government to forever remain inviolated. To guard against transgressions of the high powers herein delegated, we declare that everything in this Bill of Rights expected out of the general powers of government shall forever remain inviolated, and all laws contrary thereto or to the following provisions shall be void. So you can challenge them on that. That's pretty cool. And that's really it on Article 1. So I'm going to add that with the NRA, with the NRA link by RT. So that's very something to think about. It's pretty cool because, like I say, hey, they're out. At least they're out there exercising their natural born rights. And you gotta, I won't get intimidated by that. If they carry firearms around me, I should say, hey, nice piece, man. Well, how accurate is it? All right. So the next thing I'm gonna be hitting is came out today. It's from the Boiling Frogs Post, which is a real good site by I think her name is Sybil Simmons, I think it is. Yeah, she's like the editor of it, and this one's entitled "The Rise of the European Right: Reaction to the Neoliberal Right." This is posted by Dr. James Petrus, came out today. In the absence of a left alternative, the working class voters have opted for two alternatives: massive over abstention and strikes. The European parliamentary elections witnessed a major breakthrough for the right-wing parties throughout the region. The rise of the right runs from the Nordic countries, the United Kingdom, the Baltic and Low countries, France, Central and Eastern Europe to the Mediterranean. Most, if not all, of these emerged right-wing parties mark a sharp break with the ruling neoliberal, Christian and social democratic parties who have presided over a decade of crisis. The new right cannot be understood simply by attaching negative labels: fascist, racist, and anti-Semitic. The rise of the right has to be placed in the context of the decay of political, social, and economic institutions. The general and persistent decline of living standards and this integration of community bonds and class solidarity, the entire existing political edifice constructed by the neoliberal parties, bears deep responsibility for the systematic crisis and decay of everyday life. Moreover, this is how it is understood by a growing mass of working people who vote for the right. The so-called radical left, usually defined as the political parties to the left of the governing social democratic parties, with the exception of Syriza in Greece, have failed to capitalize on the decline of the neoliberal parties. There are several reasons that account for the lack of a right-left polarization. Most of the radical left, in the final count, gave critical support to one or another of the labor or social democratic parties, reduced in their distance from the political economic disasters they have followed. Secondly, the radical left's position on some issues were irrelevant or offensive to many workers, namely gay marriage and identified politics. Thirdly, the radical left recruited prominent personalities from discredited labor and social democratic parties and thus raised suspicion that they are a new version of past deceptions. Fourthly, the radical left is a strong on public demonstrations demanding structural change, but lacks the grassroots clientelistic organizations of the right, which provide services such as soup kitchens and clinics dealing with day-to-day problems. While the right pretends to be outside the neoliberal establishment, challenging the assumption of broad powers by the Brussels elite, the left is ambiguous. Its support for a social Europe implies a commitment to reform a discredited or moribund structure. The right proposes national capitalism outside of Brussels. The left proposes socialism within the European Union. The left parties, the older communist parties, and more recent grouping like Syriza in Greece have had mixed results. The former have generally stagnated or lost support despite the systematic crisis. The latter, like Syriza, have made impressive gains, but failed to break the 30% barrier. Both lack electoral allies. As a result, the immediate challenge to the neoliberal status quo comes from the electoral new right parties, and on the left from extra-parliamentary social movements and trade unions. In the immediate period, the crisis of the European Union is being played out between the neoliberal establishment and the new right. The nature of the new right. The new right has gained support largely because it's denounced the four pillars of the neoliberal establishment: globalization, foreign financial control, executive rule by fiat, the Brussels Troika, and the unregulated influx of cheap immigrant labor. Nationalism, as embraced by the new right, is tied to national capitalism. Local producers, retailers, and farmers are counterpoised to free traders, mergers, and acquisitions by international bankers and giant multinationals. The new right has its audience among the provincial, and small-time businesses elites, as well as workers devastated by plant closures and relocations. The new right nationalism is protectionist, seeking tariff barriers and state regulations to protect industry and workers from unfair competition from overseas conglomerates and low-wage immigrant labor. The problem is that protectionism limits the import of cheap consumer goods sold in many small retail shops and affordable to workers and the lower middle class. The right dreams of a corporatist model where national workers and industries bond to oppose liberal competitive capitalism and class struggle trade unions. As the class struggle declines, the tripartite politics of the neoliberal right is reconfigured by the new right to include a national capital and a paternalistic state. In the sum of nationalism of the right evokes a mythical past of harmony where national capital and labor unite under a common communal identity to confront big foreign capital and cheap immigrant labor. Political strategies and electoral and extra-parliamentary politics. Currently, the new right is primarily orientated to electoral politics, especially as it gains mass support. They have increased their share to electorate by combining mass mobilization and community organizing with electoral politics, especially in depressed areas. They have attracted middle-class voters from the neoliberal right and working-class voters from the old left, while some sectors of the right, like the Golden Dawn in Greece, openly flaunt fascist symbols, flags, and uniforms, as well as provoking street brawls. Other pressure the governing neoliberal right to adopt some of their demands, especially regarding immigration and the deportation of illegals. For the present, most of the new right's focus is on advancing its agenda and gaining supporters through aggressive appeals within the constitutional order and by keeping the more violent sectors under control. Moreover, the current political climate is not conducive to open extra-parliamentary street fighting where the new right would be easily crushed. Both right-wing strategists believe the current context is conducive to the accumulation of forces via peaceful methods. Conditions facilitating the growth of the right. There are several structural factors contributing to the growth of the new right in Europe. First and foremost, there is a clear decline of democratic power in institutions resulting from the centralization of executive legislative powers in the hands of self-appointed elite in Brussels. The new right argues effectively that the European Union has become a profoundly authoritarian political institution, disenfranchising voters and imposing harsh austerity programs without a popular mandate. Secondly, national interests have been subordinated to benefit the financial elite, identified as responsible for the harsh policies that have undermined living standards and devastated local industries. The new right counterpoises the nation to the Brussels Troika, the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, and the European Commission. Thirdly, liberalization has eroded local industries and undermined communities and protective labor legislation. The right denounces liberal immigration policies which permit the large-scale inflow of cheap workers at the time of a depression-level unemployment. The crisis of capitalism combined with the large force of cheap immigrant labor forms and the material basis for the right-wing appeals to workers, especially those in precarious jobs or unemployed. Excuse me here. Right contradiction to the double discourse. The right, while criticizing a neoliberal state for employment, focuses mainly on the immigrants competing with the nationals in the labor market rather than on the capitalists whose investment decisions determine levels of employment and unemployment. The right attacks the authoritarian nature of the European Union, but its now structures, ideology, and history prefigured a repressive state. The right rightly proposes to end foreign elite control of the economy, but its own vision of a national state, especially one linked to NATO, multinational corporations, and imperial war, will provide no basis for rebuilding the national economy. The right speaks to the need of the dispossessed and they need to end austerity, but it eschews the only effective mechanism for countering inequalities, class organization, and class struggle. Its vision for the collaboration between productive capital and labor is contradicted by the aggressive capitalist offenses to cut wages, social services, pensions, and working conditions. The new right targets immigrants as a cause of unemployment while obscuring the role of the capitalists who hire and fire, invest abroad, relocate firms, and introduce technology to replace labor. They focus the workers' anger downward against immigrants instead of upward toward the owner of the means of production, finance, and distribution who ultimately manipulate the labor market. In the meantime, the radical left mindless defense of unlimited immigration in the name of an abstract notion of international workers' solidarity exposes their arrogant liberal bias as though they had never consulted real workers to have to compete with immigrants for the scarce jobs under increasingly unfavorable conditions. The radical left, under the banner International Solidarity, has ignored the historical fact that internationalism must be built on a strong national foundation of organized, employed workers. The left has allowed the new right to exploit and manipulate powerful, righteous, nationalist causes. The radical left has counterpoised nationalism to socialism, rather than seeing them as intertwined, especially in the present context of an imperialist-dominated European Union. The right for national independence, the break-up of the European Union, is essential to the struggle for democracy and deepening the class struggle for jobs and social welfare. The class struggle is more powerful and effective on the familiar down terrain rather than confronting distant overseers in Brussels. The notion among many radical left leaders to remake the EU into a social Europe, the idea that the EU could be converted into a European Union of socialist states, simply prolongs the suffering of the workers and the subordination of nations to the non-elected bankers who run the EU. No one seriously believes that buying stocks in Deutsche Bank is joining its annual stockholders meeting will allow workers to transform into a people's bank. Yet the bank of the banks, the Troika, made of the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the IMF, set all major policies for each member state of the European Union, unrectified and remaining captive of the Euro metaphysic. The left has abdicated its role in advancing the class struggle through a rebirth of the national struggle against EU oligarchs. Results and perspectives. The right is advancing rapidly, even if unevenly across Europe. Its support is not ephemeral, but stable and cumulative, at least in the medium run. Okay, that's good. The causes are structural and results from the new right's ability to exploit the socio-economic crisis of the neoliberal rights government and to denounce authoritarian and anti-national policies of the unelected EU oligarch. The new right strength is in opposition. Their protest resonates while they are distant from the command centers of the capitalist economy and state. Are they capable of moving from protest to power? Shared the power with the neoliberals will obviously dilute and disaggregate their current social base. The contradictions will deepen as the new right moves from position of opposition to sharing power with the neoliberal right. The massive roundups and deportation of immigrant workers is not going to change capitalist employment policies or restore social services or improve living standards. Promoting national capital over foreign through some corporatist union of capital and labor will not reduce class conflict. It is totally unrealistic to imagine national capital rejecting its foreign partner in the interest of labor. The division within the nationalist right between overtly fascist and electoral corporatist sectors will intensify. The accommodation with national capital, democratic procedures, and social inequalities will likely open the door to a new wave of class conflict, will oppose the sham radicalism of the nationalist right, a committed left embedded in the national terrain, proud of its national and class traditions, and capable of unifying workers across ethnic and religious identities, can regain supporters and re-emerge as a real alternative to the two faces of the right, the neoliberal and the nationalist new right. The prolonged economic crisis, declining living standards, unemployment, and personal insecurity propelling rise of the nationalist right can also lead to the emergence of a left deeply linked to national class and community realities. The neoliberals have no solutions to offer for the disasters and problems of their own making. The nationalists of the new right have the wrong reactionary answer. Does the left have the solution? Only by overthrowing the despotic imperial rule of Brussels can they begin to address the national class issues. Postscript and final observation. In the absence of a left alternative, the working class voters have opted for two alternatives: massive voter abstention and strikes. In the recent EU election, 60% of the French electorate abstained, with abstentions approaching 80% in the working class neighborhoods. This pattern was exceeded throughout the EU. Hardly a mandate for the EU or for the new right in the weeks and days before the vote. Workers took to the streets. There were massive strikes of civil servants and shipyard workers, as well as workers from other sectors, and mass demonstrations by the unemployed, popular classes opposing EU-imposed austerity cuts in social services, health, education, pensions, factory closures, and mass layoffs. Widespread voter abstention and street demonstrations point to a huge proportion of the population rejecting the both neoliberal right of the Troika as well as the new right. He does have a website, and very interesting. Well done by Professor James Petrus, who made it really, really well. And I have to say this: scapegoating is a dangerous trend. It's been happening everywhere. They want to use the immigrants as the scapegoats for the economic problems. It's happening in Europe, North America. It's worldwide. There's nothing new at all. Alright, the fact is this too: the European Union is part of the Club of Rome agenda. They want to have 10 charters around the world. Oceania, Japan, the European Union, of course, North American Union, which is Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Alright, they're trying to bring that whole globalist agenda into one. And that's why a lot of people have been getting a little pissed off, because they're just playing with the pawns instead of challenging the kings. Furthermore, you got the World Bank, the IMF, and the European Central Banks, trying to control the money. That's very scary too, because what they have in the euro dollar is nothing more than fiat, just like the rest of the monies around the world, including the US dollar. Print them out of thin air. Let's see how far it lasts. Just to remember, this happened in the 20s, when from 1922 to 1928. What happened was Germany, when they lost the First World War, they had to pay a restitution for damages around Europe. So the central banks Germany decided to print money out of thin air. From 1922 to 1928, their Reichsmark became crap. So the people in Germany just flung their money out in the streets because the economy just totally busted. And you got a couple of yahoos, gullible people. You got a wheelbarrow bragging they're a millionaire, they're rich and happy. They walked into the store with a big smile on their face, and the store goes, "Yes, what's so funny? What's the matter? Why are you so happy?" He goes, "Look what I got, I'm a millionaire." You know what the clerk says? "You can't even buy a damn loaf of bread for that." That's when all hell broke loose economically. And who took advantage of that? The National Socialist Party, also known as the Nazis. And they're trying to do the same thing over again in Europe with the European Union. Go at each other's throats, blame the capitalists, the communists, the Democrats, and all that. The whole thing it's a game of neo-mercantilism. All right, it's not a true form of open free market, open competitive free market form of capitalism, which is people go in there to purchase products from certain companies on their own free will. What they're actually doing here is trying to shove it down their throats. Now look what's happening. So just gotta pray for everyone in Europe on what's going on, because it is a really hot topic. So, all right. Next I'm gonna be hitting is a past article. This is from Wired magazine, Wired.com. It's entitled "U.S. Marshals Seize Cops Spying Records to Keep Them from the ACLU." This was done by Kim Zetter, which was posted actually on June 3rd, so it was yesterday. As it reads, a routine request in Florida public records regarding the use of surveillance tool known as Stingray took an extraordinary turn recently when federal authorities seized documents before the police could release them. The surprise move by U.S. Marshals Service stunned the American Civil Liberties Union, and early this year filed a public records request with the Sarasota Police Department for information detailing the use of its controversial surveillance tool. The ACLU had an appointment last Tuesday to review documents pertaining to a case investigated by a Sarasota police detective, but marshals swooped in the last minute to grab the records, claiming they belonged to the U.S. Marshal Service and barring the police from releasing them. ACLU staff attorney Nathan Freed Wessler called the move truly extraordinary beyond the worst transparency violations the group has seen regarding the documents detailing the use of police technology. This is a consent with what we've seen around the country with federal agencies trying to meddle with public requests for Stingray operation information, Wessler said, noting that federal authorities have, in other cases, invoked the Homeland Security Act to prevent the release of such records. The feds are working very hard to block any release of this information to the public. Stingrays, also known as IMSI catchers, stimulate a cell phone tower and trick nearby mobile devices into connecting with them, thereby revealing their location. A Stingray can see and record device unique ID number and traffic data, as well as information that points to its location. By moving a Stingray around, authorities can triangulate a device's location with greater precision than is possible using data obtained from a carrier's fixed tower location. The records sought by the ACLU are important because the organization has learned that the Florida police detective obtained permission to use Stingray simply by filling an application with the court under Florida's trap and trace statute instead of obtaining a probable cause warrant. Trap and trace orders generally used to collect information from the phone companies and telephone numbers received and called by the specific account. A stingray, however, can track the location of cell phones, including private spaces. The government has long asserted, and it doesn't need a probable cause warrant to use stingrays because the device doesn't collect the content of phone calls and text messages, but instead operates like pen registers and trap and traces, collecting the equivalent of header information. The ACLU and others argue that the device are more invasive than trap and trace. Recently, the Tallahassee Police Department revealed it used stingray at least 200 times since 2010 without telling any judge, because the device manufacturers made the police department sign a non-disclosure agreement that police claim prevented them from disclosing use of the device to the courts. The ACLU has filed numerous records requests with police departments around the country in an effort to uncover how often devices are used and how often courts are told about them. In the Sarasota case, the U.S. Marshals Service claimed its own records the Sarasota police offered to the ACLU because it had deputized the detective in the case, making all documentation in the case federal property. Before the ACLU could view the documents Sarasota had put aside for them, the agency dispatched a marshal from its office in Tampa to seize records and move them to an undisclosed location. The U.S. Marshal Service declined to comment, saying it does not discuss pending litigation. Florida Public Records Law required that even a dispute over records occurred, the Sarasota Police Department was legally obligated to hold onto records for at least 30 days once it received the ACLU request. That period would have given the ACLU a chance to argue its case in court to obtain the records. We have seen our fair share of federal government attempts to keep records about stingray secrets, but we've never seen an actual physical raid on state records in order to conceal them from public view, the ACLU wrote in a blog post today. The ACLU filed an emergency motion seeking a temporary injunction preventing the police department from releasing additional files to the marshals. The motion also asks the courts to find the department in violating of state law for allowing the U.S. Marshal Service to seize the documents. The ACLU wants the court order the police department to retrieve the documents because the issue is the state matter. If the ACLU filed the motion in the state court, the judge cannot directly order the U.S. Marshal Service, a federal agency, to return the documents. As far as I'm concerned, I think the U.S. Marshal Service should take their rhetoric and shove it up their rectum for all I care. But the truth of the matter is, my friends, it's not just it is mainly a 10th Amendment issue. Okay? How the hell the U.S. Federal Marshals can supersede Florida State Constitution? Alright, or the 10th Amendment. And I'm going to do a little typing here. Hold on. I want to type in the Florida Constitution. Sorry about that. There's a little delay. I just got this on here. And we can hit Article 1. I'm gonna be using the Ballotpedia, all right, on this, and it says here in the Ballotpedia, okay, about basic rights, all rights considered inalienable, and of course, freedom of speech, right to work. Okay, nope. We'll just hit Section 12, Article 1, Section 12. Searches and seizures, the right to people. Yep, okay, that's related to the 4th Amendment. Alright, and actually, you know what? I'm going to really go down to like 24. Yeah, 24. Article 1, Section 24. It's called Access to Public Records and Meetings. And it says here, every person has the right to inspect or copy any public record made or received in connection with the official business of any public body, officer, or employee of the state, or person acting on their behalf, except with respect to records exempt to pursuant to the section or specifically made confidential by this Constitution. This section specifically includes legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government, and each agency or department created thereunder, counties, municipalities, and districts, and each constitutional officer, board, and commission or entity created pursuant to the law of this Constitution. So the truth of the matter is this. This is all public records. Period. The U.S. Marshals had no business to interfere with Florida's rights for public records. And the hell with their pathetic, undisclosed agreement. They could just shove that up there. You know what? I'm just digressing right now. And bottom line is this: ACLU. I think everyone should start petitioning and ask for these public papers and see if they we can't do it because the U.S. Marshals. I will say, hey, so can you explain why you're violating your oath? Even do it to your county sheriffs too. If they don't do it, use that as a weapon for the next election campaign. So that's enough of that. Well, I'm not really happy, but I will add that to put that link with the U.S. Marshals. And last but not least, this is pretty cool. This is again good site for Seattle Organics Restaurant. Always enjoyed reading their work. And this one's entitled The Secret Takeover of Our Food Supply by Huge Giant American Corporations and How Corporations like Tyson are Pioneers of Meat Racket. This will bust your bubble. The author and journalist Christopher Leonard recently published a book with the title The Meat Racket, The Secret Takeover of America's Food Business. As you can tell, sorry about that. As you can tell from the title of the book, Christopher Leonard talks about the hellish farming practices of corporations like Tyson and Cargill Inc. that have pioneered a modern way of food production. These companies are given total monopoly and ownership over every stage of the meat business, and they are powerful enough to increase the meat prices as high as they desired. We can call that monopolistic capitalism, not open, competitive, free market. According to Leonard, there are 4 companies that make 85% of the American beef, 65% of its pork, and 3 companies that make almost half of the chickens in America. As a matter of fact, in the chicken business, Tyson Foods own the hatcheries where the chickens are born, breeding company that determines where the chickens are raised, feed mills, GMO corn, and hormones to fatten up chicks, the slaughterhouses where the chickens are being processed, and trucking lines where chicks are delivered. You may know that pork and beef industry are no different than the chicken industry, and the monopoly of few agribusinesses have led to drastic increase in profit margin of meat industry. In fact, America's biggest meat company, Tyson Foods, had about $778 million in pure profit just last year, and the company relentlessly keeps increasing the meat prices in America. How giant meat companies like Tyson Food control every stage of the meat business and even the meat prices. The current CEO of Tyson Food, Donnie Smith, joined the company in the 1980s and steadily climbed up the ranks at Tyson. During the 2008 financial crisis, Donnie was appointed as CEO of Tyson Foods. At the time, due to new ethanol subsidies, the cost feed grain like corn had reached its highest level, destroying the profit that Tyson had gathered for more than a decade from a cheap GMO corn feed. Around the same time, Americans were no longer eating at restaurants or buying Tyson's chicken nuggets at the grocery store. For the first time ever after World War II, chicken consumption was not growing every single year. In November 2008, Smith had a series of meetings with Tyson executives to find out what could they do to get out of the financial crisis. The solution was very simple. especially for a man like Smith, with thick Southern accent and a sharp business sense. All Tyson Company needed to do is to cut back production and keep chicken supplies lower, which that would automatically drive the prices up. Cutting down production meant the company would intentionally scale back its business, and farmers would have lower income since they got fewer deliveries of chickens while their debt payment remained the same. By December 2008, Tyson cut back its meat and egg production, and in just a matter of a few weeks, the chicken and egg prices rose up by 20 cents, and Tyson businesses once again profitable. How sneaky is that? Most remarkable thing about this plan was the fact that after decades of lax antitrust enforcement during the Bush administration, Tyson was now able to buy most of its competitors. Around the same time, the federal government also made a decision to bail out the big banks like Wells Fargo's and Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase with your tax dollars. So the big banks ended up buying up smaller banks. As a result, they are too big to fail now. What Tyson executives could not even imagine was the fact that buying all their competitors did give Tyson Food and its competitors, Pilgrims, the power to control more than 40% of the national meat market. Back in 1960, no single poultry had enough market shares to be able to cut supplies and drive up the meat prices. Today, a handful of giant agribusinesses, including Tyson, have the power to raise prices of beef, pork, and chicken, even as grain prices to keep going down. As a result, even during the economic collapse, the profit margin of the country's top 4 meat producers doubled between 2008 and 2009. The power of giant meat and biotech lobby over the Obama administration. During the 2008 presidential election, Obama heavily criticized lax antitrust enforcement of George W. Bush, and he promised to put food transparency ahead of the interests of giant agribusinesses. Even in 2012, he tried to propose a series of new antitrust measurements against the power of giant meat companies. However, all the promises and reform plans of the Obama administration were undermined and beaten down by the efforts of the powerful meat and biotech lobbyists. The Obama administration also betrayed the trust of the public of appointing the most ruthless Wall Street advisors in his cabinet and appointing key figures of giant biotech companies like Monsanto and DuPont as head of FDA and USDA. Wow, Barry boy, you just proved to be a bend over Bob and proud. I will proceed. He also promised to label GMO foods, and while his entire family dined on nothing but Michelle's organic grown garden, he chose to turn a blind eye on the issues of GE foods and ignore the right of an average consumer to choose non-GMO foods if they want to. The reality, this is all the promises and efforts of the Obama administration seems no match for the meat and biotech lobbyists who truly runs this administration. Factory farming, the truth is too hard to swallow. Amazingly, the agribusiness lobby is even pushing legislators to pass laws that will prohibit investigations and photographs that show footage of animal abuse. Recently, animal abuse in the Oklahoma pig farm with strong ties to Tyson Food was caught on camera. The disturbing graphics showed how the farm employees were kicking, hitting, and throwing pigs. The disturbing images were caught on camera on how the farm employees were gouging pigs' eyes, slamming baby pigs into the concrete, and one worker throws a bowling ball at the animal's head. Here are a full video. Due to the graphic nature, viewer discretion is advised. This is from Activist Post. Let's see if I can hit this one. Hold on here. Yeah, it's extra article on there. The link, that's from Joe Wright. So, and here's a video.
Foods has terminated its contract with an Oklahoma pig farm after video was released of workers abusing the animals. We want to warn you, the images are disturbing. The video, released by animal rights group Mercy for Animals, mostly consists of West Coast Farms employees kicking, hitting, and throwing pigs. The more graphic sections of that video show the workers gouging pigs' eyes, slamming baby pigs into concrete, and one worker even throws a bowling ball at an animal's head. NBC, which had obtained the video, showed it to Tyson Foods, and the company immediately cut ties with the farm. A spokesperson for Tyson said, "We're extremely disappointed by the mistreatment shown in the video and will not tolerate this kind of animal mishandling. We will take possession of the animals remaining on the farm." The owner of West Coast Farms told the outlet he's already fired the workers seen in the video. But that might not be enough. The group that took the footage, Mercy for Animals, has called for criminal charges to be filed against the farm. Animal welfare advocate Temple Grandin compared this incident to the infamous Westland hallmark abuse. That case forced the largest meat recall in U.S. history and a $500 million settlement. For Newsy, I'm Lauren Zima.
Yeah, and there's even that link there. There's a full video for additional information and petition. This is CEO Donnie Smith. So, like I said, I just find that very disturbing because only thing I can recommend to all my listeners out there: time to support the local farmers, because they, a lot of them, people, if they do eat meat, they rather honor them, bless them and honor them, than just beating them up like they're pieces of garbage, And of course, when you can't really have that negative vibe. Well, I do find that disgusting, and this is a form of corporatism, okay, combined with neo-mercantilism. Everyone here, in the United States, around the world, it's time to support the local farmers, local farm markets and all that. That's the way to get the economy going. Don't rely on a national level. Do it on a local perspective. It includes myself. I have to admit it. I'm taking the initiative little by little. We all have bad habits. I have mine too. I gotta practice it, what I preach. But I'm learning every day, so I admit that. And gotta do those little challenges and just go out there and make it work. Because I'm not a big fan of Tyson foods anyway. Well, I remember my mom got me stuff from Tyson. I didn't even eat it. I wouldn't even feed it to the dogs, okay? That's how I feel about those bastards. Corporate bastards. But that's really it. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen. I know I went a little bit over an hour. That's okay. And I will post this on my Spreaker page. Plus, if you want to send your comments and recommendations and information, you can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, YouTube. I just finally got back on it because I'm learning too. So you can hit me on YouTube, plus iHeartRadio. You can send your information there. And I gotta take the initiative on going to worldtruth.org too, because I haven't really posted anything there in a while. But based on this little move, little delays, so that's to all my fans or listeners from World Truth. It will come soon. So thank you for your patience. And I'm going to be signing off my traditional signatory ending statements. Demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate societies. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.